In the dawn of time, when the 9 realms were forged from fire and ice, a prophecy was whispered on the winds of creation. It spoke of a final, world-shattering conflict, a duel of cosmic proportions destined to unfold at the end of all things. At its heart are 2 eternal adversaries, a god of immense strength, the champion of Asgard whose hammer commands the storm, and a serpent of impossible size, so vast it encircles the mortal world, biting its own tail in an endless loop. Their animosity is woven into the very fabric of existence, a fated rivalry that has simmered for ages across myth and legend. This is the story of their inevitable confrontation, a battle not just for survival, but for the fate of the universe itself. It is the tale of the thunder god and the World Serpent, whose final, cataclysmic clash during the twilight of the gods, Ragnarök, will unmake the heavens and the earth, heralding the end of one age and the dawn of whatever comes next. In the shadowlands of Jotunheim, the realm of giants, a union took place that would sow the seeds of the world's end. Here, Loki, the silver-tongued god of mischief, the adopted brother of Odin, found a consort in the giantess Angrboda, whose name meant she who brings sorrow. Their pairing was not one of love, but of chaos given form. From this formidable union, 3 children were born, each more terrifying than the last, each a living embodiment of the forces that gnawed at the roots of the world tree. The first was a wolf, Fenrir. From his birth, he was unlike any other creature. He grew at a phenomenal rate, his strength increasing with every passing day. His eyes held a fearsome intelligence and a hunger that seemed aimed at the very heart of Asgard. The gods watched his growth with mounting anxiety, seeing in his powerful jaws a future they could not control. The second child was a daughter named Hel. She was a being of stark duality. One side of her body was that of a fair and beautiful woman, while the other was that of a decaying corpse, a chilling reminder of the finality that awaits all living things. Her demeanor was downcast and grim, her presence a cold weight upon the spirit. She was the personification of the grave, a silent, inevitable conclusion. The third and final offspring was a serpent. At birth, he was small, but even then, there was a venom in his gaze that promised untold growth and power. They named him Jörmungandr. This was the monstrous brood of Loki, children born of chaos and prophecy. They were not mere beasts or demigods, they were cosmic principles given flesh. Fenrir was unrestrained appetite, Hel was inescapable finality, and Jormungandr was the vast, unknowable abyss. While they grew in the desolate lands of their birth, whispers of their existence reached the golden halls of Asgard. The gods, guardians of order, heard tales of these children and felt a deep, primal fear. They were an affront to the established cosmos, a challenge that could not be ignored. A darkness was rising, and it had a name. Fear in Asgard was not born of the children's appearance alone, but from the words of the Völva, the seeress who could gaze into the tangled threads of fate. Odin, the All-Father, in his insatiable quest for knowledge, had summoned one such prophetess to learn of the future. What she revealed was not a future of endless glory, but one of fire, ice, and ultimate ruin. This was the prophecy of Ragnarök, the twilight of the gods, and at the heart of this apocalyptic vision were the 3 children of Loki. The seeress spoke of a great wolf that would break free from any chain, a wolf so immense that its lower jaw would scrape the earth and its upper jaw would touch the sky. This beast, she foretold, was destined to consume the sun, and in the final battle it would face Odin himself, bringing an end to the reign of the All-Father. The prophecy identified this creature as Fenrir. She then spoke of the final, cataclysmic confrontation on the field of Vigrid. There, Thor, the mighty champion of Asgard, would face his own ultimate adversary. This foe would rise from the world's oceans, a serpent of such colossal size that its thrashing would poison the sky and churn the seas into a venomous rage. This was the destiny of Jörmungandr, the Midgard serpent. Lastly, she spoke of a desolate realm for the departed, a place for those who did not fall with honor in battle. This domain, she explained, would be ruled by a queen of dual nature, Loki's own daughter, Hel. Her role in the final days would be to unleash her army of the dishonored upon the world, adding to the forces of chaos. The prophecy was a death sentence for the gods. It was not a warning of what might be, but a declaration of what would be. Every word sent a tremor through the foundations of Asgard. The gods, who saw themselves as masters of the 9 realms, were now confronted with their own mortality. They were not merely facing monsters, they were facing a preordained, inescapable doom. The knowledge was a poison, turning their thoughts from governance to survival. How could they rule a cosmos they were destined to lose? This terrible foresight spurred them to action. Fate may have been written, but the gods of Asgard would not meet it sitting on their thrones. They would defy destiny itself. Driven by the chilling prophecy, Odin and the Aesir resolved to act. They could not allow these agents of destruction to grow unchecked in the wild lands of Jotunheim. A grim procession of gods journeyed to the stronghold of Angrboda to seize the 3 children. It was a preemptive strike against fate, a desperate gamble to postpone the inevitable. For each child, Odin, the arbiter of destinies, decreed a unique fate, hoping to neutralize the threat each one posed. For his daughter, Hel, whose unsettling appearance mirrored the divide between life and afterlife, Odin chose a form of exile that was also a coronation. He cast her down into the deepest and darkest of the 9 realms, the primordial land of mist and cold, known as Niflheim. There, he granted her dominion over all who passed from the world through sickness or old age. She was to be the queen of this vast, sunless kingdom, her isolation ensuring she could not directly meddle in the affairs of Asgard or Midgard. Her kingdom was her prison. For the serpent, Jörmungandr, still young but radiating a potent venom, Odin chose the vast, untamable sea. With a display of his immense power, the All-Father took the writhing creature and hurled it from Asgard into the great ocean that encircled the world of humanity. The serpent plunged into the blackest depths, banished to a world without light or air, a watery abyss where the gods believed it would be contained and forgotten. But it was Fenrir, the wolf, who presented the greatest and most immediate challenge. His strength was already legendary, his spirit utterly indomitable. The gods attempted to bind him with the strongest chains of iron, but he shattered them with ease. Realizing no conventional restraint could hold him, they commissioned the dwarves of Svartalfheim to forge a magical fetter. It was called Gleipnir, crafted from impossible things, the sound of a cat's footfall, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain. It was as thin as a silk ribbon, yet stronger than any chain. To trick the wary wolf into accepting the bond, the god Tyr made a great sacrifice, placing his hand in Fenrir's mouth as a pledge of good faith. When Gleipnir held fast, the wolf, enraged and betrayed, claimed his price. The gods had succeeded. The monstrous brood was separated and imprisoned, each banished to a realm where they believed their influence would be nullified. A tense quiet fell over Asgard, but it was not the quiet of peace. It was the quiet of a clock that has been temporarily stopped, its final chime merely delayed. Odin's act of casting Jörmungandr into the sea was meant to be an end, a final solution to 1/3 of a terrifying prophecy. But the abyss does not destroy, it nurtures its own. In the sunless trenches of the world's ocean, the serpent did not perish. It grew. Fed by the strange energies of the deep and his own innate chaotic power, Jörmungandr expanded to an unthinkable scale. His length became immeasurable, his girth like that of a mountain range snaking across the seafloor. He grew so vast that his colossal body could encircle the entire realm of humanity, the continent of Midgard. He became the living, breathing boundary of the known world. There, in the eternal twilight of the depths, he completed the circle, taking the end of his own tail into his mouth. This image, the Ouroboros, is an ancient symbol of eternity and cycles, but in Jormungandr's case, it was a symbol of confinement. He was both the prisoner and the prison. His coiled body formed the ultimate barrier, a constant, looming presence that defined the very edge of existence for mankind. For centuries, he lay largely dormant, his slow breathing causing the tides to rise and fall. His occasional, restless movements would stir the waters, creating catastrophic storms and tidal waves that sailors would attribute to the wrath of the gods, never knowing the true source of the chaos. He became a legend, a myth whispered by mariners who glimpsed a section of his massive scales on the horizon, mistaking it for a chain of unknown islands. He was the Midgard Serpent, the World Serpent, a name that spoke of his function and his scale. He was no longer just Loki's son. He was a fundamental feature of the world's geography and a constant, physical reminder of the prophecy. While Fenrir was bound and hell reigned in a distant realm, Jörmungandr was always present, wrapped around the heart of the human world. He was a sleeping apocalypse, a venomous promise waiting for the day of awakening. His presence ensured that humanity lived on a precipice, blissfully unaware that their entire world was contained within the coils of a monster destined to help unmake it. If Jörmungandr represented the encroaching elemental chaos, then Asgard had its own champion of order. He was the son of Odin and the personification of Earth, a god whose power was as direct and formidable as a bolt of lightning from a storm-filled sky. This was Thor, the Thunderer. He was the protector of both Asgard, the realm of the gods, and Midgard, the realm of humanity. While Odin sought wisdom and played intricate games of strategy against fate, Thor's approach was simpler, more direct. He was the strong arm of the Aesir, the unyielding wall against which the forces of destruction would break. His purpose was defined by his legendary weapon, the warhammer Mjolnir. Forged by the finest dwarven smiths, the hammer was a symbol of his authority and an instrument of immense power, capable of leveling mountains and summoning thunderstorms. Thor was a figure of immense popularity among the Norse people. They saw in him a guardian, a god who actively defended their world from the giants and monsters that lurked in the wild places. He was not a distant, calculating king like his father, but a relatable, passionate, and sometimes hot-headed warrior. He possessed a profound sense of duty and a righteous fury that was reserved for those who threatened the cosmic balance. The rivalry between Thor and the World Serpent was personal and ancient, destined from the prophecy but cemented by their own encounters. One famous tale recounts how Thor, on a journey to the castle of a giant king, was challenged to a series of contests. In one, he was goaded into attempting to lift a colossal cat. Despite exerting all his tremendous strength, he could only manage to lift one of its paws from the ground. It was later revealed that this was no mere animal, but Jörmungandr himself, disguised by magic. The fact that Thor could move even a part of the serpent sent a shock of fear through the giant king, for it showed a power that could truly threaten the beast. This encounter was a dress rehearsal for the final conflict, a moment where the two destined adversaries tested each other's strength across the veil of illusion. It solidified their roles. Thor, the only being with the might to challenge the serpent; Jörmungandr, the only creature vast enough to be a true match for the god of thunder. The stage was set, not just by prophecy, but by a deep, instinctual animosity between two opposing forces of nature. Of all the tales told of Thor, none capture the sheer audacity of the god and the scale of his nemesis, quite like the story of his fishing trip. It begins not with a declaration of war, but with a disguise. Thor, taking the form of a young, strapping boy, presents himself to the giant Hymir, requesting to join him on his daily fishing expedition. Hymir, unimpressed by the youth's apparent age, scoffs at the idea, doubting he would be of any help. Undeterred, Thor insists, his divine confidence masked by youthful bravado. To prove his worth, he finds Hymir's finest ox, and with his bare hands prepares it as bait, a grim offering for the creature he intends to catch. The giant, grudgingly impressed by this show of strength, allows the boy aboard his vessel. As they row out, Hymir is quickly astonished. The youth rows with a power that strains the very timbers of the boat, propelling them faster and farther than Hymir had ever gone before. The giant grows nervous, warning of the dangers in the deep water, the domain of the World Serpent. But this is precisely where Thor intends to go. He is not fishing for cod or halibut. He is hunting the beast that encircles the world. Ignoring Hymir's protests, Thor rows them to the very edge of the world, to the spot where Jörmungandr lies sleeping in the abyss. There, he baits his colossal hook with the ox head and casts his line into the fathomless dark. The wait is not long. A tremor runs through the line, a pull so immense it nearly capsizes the small boat. The World Serpent has taken the bait. What follows is a contest of pure, cosmic force. Thor, planting his feet for leverage, begins to pull. The serpent, roused from its slumber and enraged, pulls back. The ocean churns into a maelstrom around them. The strain is so great that Thor's feet break through the hull of the boat, planting themselves directly on the seabed below. He is now anchored to the foundation of the world, pulling against the creature that defines its borders. With a final, thunderous heave, Thor wrenches the serpent's head from the water. For a breathtaking moment, the two adversaries face each other. The god of thunder, eyes blazing with lightning, and the World Serpent, its fangs dripping with a venom that can dissolve creation itself. But the confrontation is cut short. Hymir, pale with terror at the sight, takes his knife and severs the line. With a deafening roar, the serpent sinks back into the depths. Thor's rage is absolute, but the deed is done. The serpent is gone, but the encounter has changed everything. A line has been crossed, a challenge issued and met. This was not the end, but a prelude to a much larger conflict, an appointment now irrevocably set for the end of time. Thor's strength was legendary, a source of pride for the gods, and a cause for fear among their enemies. He believed his power to be absolute, a force capable of overcoming any physical challenge. But a journey into the heart of Jotunheimr, the realm of the giants, would teach him a profound lesson about the nature of power and the limits of perception. He and his companions arrived at the fortress of the giant king Utgarda Loki, a master of illusion and deception. Confident and boisterous, Thor accepted a series of challenges designed to humiliate him. After his companions failed their own tests, Thor was subjected to trials of drinking, running, and wrestling, each of which he lost through trickery he could not comprehend. His final challenge seemed almost insulting in its simplicity. Utgarda Loki pointed to a large gray cat sleeping by the hearth. All Thor had to do, the king said, was lift the creature from the floor. A simple feat for the strongest of the gods. Thor approached, amused. He bent down and took hold of the cat's midsection, expecting to lift it with ease. He pulled, but the cat did not move. It simply stretched, its back arching towards the ceiling. Surprised, Thor put his full strength into the effort. He strained, muscles bulging, his divine power surging through him. The giants in the hall watched, their mocking smiles slowly fading into expressions of disbelief and alarm. Thor's effort was monumental, yet all he could accomplish was to lift one of the cat's paws a few inches from the stone floor. Defeated and deeply frustrated, Thor conceded. It was only later, as the gods were leaving the fortress, that Loki revealed the truth of his illusions. The drinking horn had been connected to the ocean itself. His running opponent was thought itself. And the cat, he explained, was no cat at all. It was the Midgard serpent, Jörmungandr, wrapped around the entire world, its head and tail hidden by the king's powerful magic. The giant king confessed that when Thor had strained and managed to lift its paw, he had in fact lifted the colossal beast so high that its arched back had nearly touched the sky. Everyone in the fortress, including the king himself, had been terrified by this display of incomprehensible power. Thor was enraged at the deception, but a deeper understanding dawned. He had not fought a monster. He had attempted to lift the world itself. He now knew, in a way he never had before, the true, world-encompassing scale of his fated enemy. The serpent was not just a creature in the sea. It was a fundamental component of creation. The relationship between a hero and their nemesis is rarely simple. It transcends mere hatred, evolving into a complex dynamic of opposition and definition. For Thor, the protector of order, and Jörmungandr, the embodiment of the world's chaotic boundaries, their enmity was a cosmic necessity. Each gave the other purpose. Their encounters were not random acts of aggression. They were probes into the fundamental nature of their opponent, building a unique, unspoken understanding between god and beast. The fishing trip was their first true meeting, a raw contest of physical power. There, in the churning sea, they measured each other's strength directly. Thor felt the serpent's world-shaking might through the line, and Jormungandr felt the unyielding, divine force of the god who dared to pull it from the depths. It was a pure, violent introduction, establishing them as physical equals on a scale that defied imagination. Neither could fully best the other, creating a stalemate that demanded a future resolution. Then came the encounter in the hall of Loki. This was a different kind of test, one of perception rather than power. In trying to lift the enchanted cat, Thor was not fighting the serpent, but rather grappling with its conceptual vastness. He learned that Jörmungandr was not merely a large creature, it was a geographical and magical constant, its body forming the very border of the known world. To move it was to shift the foundations of reality. This revelation must have transformed Thor's perspective. His enemy was not just a monster to be slain, but a pillar of the cosmos whose destruction would have unimaginable consequences. From these two encounters, a form of grudging respect must have been born. Thor, the champion of Asgard, is defined by the threats he faces. No giant, no troll, no monster could provide the ultimate test that Jörmungandr represented. The serpent was his equal and opposite, the immovable object to his unstoppable force. Likewise, for the serpent, coiled in eternal darkness, Thor was the one being in all the 9 worlds who actively sought it out, the one power capable of challenging its existence. They were perfect adversaries, their destinies woven together by the threads of prophecy. Their final battle at Ragnarök was therefore not just about settling a score. It was the universe's way of resolving its greatest tension, the struggle between the structured world of civilization and the boundless, untamable chaos of nature that surrounds it. They were 2 poles of existence, and their final, devastating clash was as inevitable as the setting of the sun. The great tapestry of Norse cosmology is held together by bonds of kinship, oath, and natural law. But prophecies foretold a time when these bonds would fray, when the world would sicken and begin its slow spiral toward dissolution. The beginning of the end was not marked by a thunderous battle, but by a profound sadness. the passing of Baldur, the most beloved of the gods. His departure was the first thread to be pulled, signaling that the ordered world was no longer inviolable. The first tangible sign of this decay, felt across all the 9 worlds, was the Fimbulwinter, the Great Winter. It was a climate catastrophe of mythological proportions. 3 full winters followed one another, with no intervening summer. The sun and moon, pursued relentlessly by celestial wolves, gave only a pale, weak light. An unrelenting wind blew from all directions, carrying with it snow that buried the world. The cold was not just physical, it was metaphysical. It seeped into the hearts of mortals. With resources dwindling and hope fading, the bonds of society dissolved. Brother turned against brother, families broke apart, and the laws of kinship and hospitality that formed the bedrock of civilization were forgotten. Midgard, the world of humanity that Thor and the gods were sworn to protect, became a desolate landscape of desperation and strife. This profound shift in the world's balance did not go unnoticed in the abyssal depths. Jörmungandr, coiled in the dark, cold waters, was a part of the world, and it felt the world's agony. The tremors of a dying earth, the chilling of the oceans, and the echoes of humanity's despair all resonated through its immense form. The serpent, which had lain largely dormant for ages, began to stir. Its movements were sluggish at first, a slow uncoiling in the deep. But as the Fimbulwinter reached its dreadful climax, the serpent's restlessness grew. Its thrashing became more violent, a physical manifestation of the world's unraveling chaos. These movements sent great, unnatural tides across the sea, a warning of the power that was about to be fully unleashed. The world grew quiet under its final blanket of snow. The age of humanity was ending in a frozen silence. But in the ocean below, a primal force was awakening. The serpent was preparing to rise, not as a creature to be fished from the sea, but as a cataclysm to swallow it whole. The final winter was a breath held before the final scream. The great winter ends, but there is no spring. Instead, the final prophecies begin to unfold with terrifying speed, each event a hammer blow against the pillars of creation. The first sign is a sound, the crowing of roosters in the halls of the giants and in the realm of the dead, a universal alarm signaling that the time has come. Then, the sky itself breaks. The wolf Skell, who has pursued the sun since the beginning of time, finally catches his prey. His brother, Hati, seizes the moon. The heavens are torn apart, and the world is plunged into a starless, oppressive twilight. This cosmic disruption is answered by the earth. Yggdrasil, the world tree, shudders from its roots to its highest branches. The ground heaves in a series of violent quakes that shatter mountains and sunder continents. No bond, no chain, no fetter can withstand this cataclysm. In the gloom, the monstrous wolf Fenrir, long held by an unbreakable dwarven ribbon, snaps his bindings. Loki, the trickster and agent of chaos, is also freed from his long confinement. The forces of destruction are now unleashed. For Jörmungandr, the worldwide earthquake is its final liberation. With a roar that is felt as much as it is heard, the World Serpent rises from the sea. Its emergence is not a gradual ascent, but a geologic event. The ocean boils and recedes as its colossal body surfaces, causing tidal waves that scour the coastlines and flood the valleys of the earth. No longer confined to the depths, it surges onto the land, a living mountain range of muscle and scale. As it moves, it spews a torrent of black venom, a poison that fills the air and stains the waters, poisoning all of creation. The armies of the end times gather. From the south, the fire giant Surtur advances with his flaming sword, leading the legions of Muspelheim. Loki, his face a mask of bitter triumph, steers Naglfar, a ship built from the uncut fingernails of the dead, crewed by the legions of hell. Alongside them all runs Fenrir, his lower jaw scraping the earth while his upper jaw scrapes the sky. And beside the great wolf advances Jörmungandr, its body carving a venomous path across the blighted landscape. In Asgard, the gods see the coming storm. The watchman Heimdall raises the Gjallarhorn to his lips and sounds a single piercing note that echoes through the 9 worlds. It is the call to arms, the final summons. On the battlements, Thor stands ready. He grips Mjolnir, the weight of it a familiar comfort in a world gone mad. His gaze is fixed on the horizon, where he sees the impossible form of his ancient rival moving toward him. The wait is over. The prophecy is fulfilled. The battle that will end the world is about to begin. The prophecies of the seeress, the Völuspa, spoke of a prelude to the end, a time when the very fabric of society would unravel. This period began not with the clash of armies, but with the chilling of hearts. It was called Fimbulwinter, the Great Winter. For 3 years without a summer, an unnatural cold gripped the 9 realms. Snow fell from all directions, biting winds howled across the frozen plains, and the sun offered no warmth. This was more than a climatic event. It was a reflection of the cosmic order decaying. In Midgard, the world of humanity, desperation turned to depravity. Oaths were forgotten, kinship ties dissolved, and brother turned against brother for survival. The sacred bonds that held communities together snapped under the strain of perpetual frost and famine. This societal breakdown was a mirror of a far greater rupture happening on a divine scale. Deep within a cavern, a creature of immense power felt the world's growing chaos. Fenrir, the great wolf and son of Loki, had been bound long ago by the gods. They had feared his strength and the prophecy that foretold his role in their downfall. The chain that held him, Gleipnir, was a marvel of dwarven craft, fashioned from impossible things: the sound of a cat's footfall, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain. It was as thin as a silk ribbon, but stronger than any iron. Yet, as the world's laws weakened, so too did the magic that sustained the unbreakable bond. The wolf, grown monstrous in his long confinement, strained against his fetter. The first tremor was felt in Asgard as a distant shudder. Then another, more violent. With a final, cataclysmic surge of strength born from ages of resentment, Fenrir shattered Gleipnir. The impossible chain was broken. The wolf's howl of freedom was a sound of pure annihilation, a promise of the ruin he would bring. The first great champion of chaos was unleashed, and the path to Ragnarok was now irrevocably open. With the great wolf Fenrir unbound, the world's foundations began to tremble, literally. The second of Loki's monstrous children, long dormant in the abyssal depths, was stirred by the cosmic imbalance. This was Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent. Cast into the great ocean surrounding the world of humanity by Odin himself, the serpent had grown to such a colossal size that it encircled the entire earth, biting its own tail. For eons it had slept, its immense bulk forming a boundary between the known world and the endless sea. But now it was waking. The initial stirrings sent tidal waves of unprecedented scale across the globe. Coastal settlements were washed away in an instant as the ocean level rose dramatically. Earthquakes shook the continents, splitting mountains and opening vast chasms in the ground. This was not a natural disaster. It was the world itself coming apart as the creature that defined its borders began to move with purpose. Jormungandr uncoiled. As its titanic form rose from the depths, it displaced oceans. The sky darkened as its head, vast as a mountain range, breached the surface. It exhaled a cloud of potent venom, a black mist that poisoned the air and the water, turning the seas toxic and withering life on the shores it touched. The ancient symbol of stability, the Ouroboros, was broken. The serpent no longer contained the world. It was now an active agent in its destruction. Its rage, simmering for millennia in the cold darkness, was finally unleashed upon the realms of gods and men. From the walls of Asgard, the gods could see the horizon churn and the seas boil. The world was flooding, not with water, but with the fury of Thor's oldest and greatest enemy. The serpent was no longer a distant threat confined to the depths. It was now advancing, its destination the final battlefield. The prophecy was taking shape, and the stage was being set for a confrontation that had been destined since the beginning of time. At the highest point of Asgard, where the shimmering rainbow bridge Bifrost met the celestial realm, stood the guardian Heimdall. Known as the White God, his senses were so acute he could hear grass growing on the earth and wool growing on sheep. For ages, he had maintained his sleepless vigil, watching for the first signs of the gods' enemies. Now, he saw them. He saw the wolf Fenrir, its jaws agape, racing across the land. He saw the World Serpent Jörmungandr poisoning the sky. He saw a ship made from the uncut fingernails of the departed, Naglfar, sailing on the flood, carrying an army of giants. And he saw Loki, freed from his own bonds, leading the forces of chaos. The moment he had watched for since the dawn of time had arrived. Heimdall raised a magnificent curved horn to his lips. This was the Gjallarhorn, the ringing horn. He took a deep breath and blew a single, powerful note. The sound was unlike any other. It was clear, piercing, and carried with it the weight of destiny. It echoed through all 9 realms simultaneously. In the fields of Midgard, humanity heard it as the final peal of thunder. In the depths of Svartalfheim, the dwarves heard it resonate in the bedrock. In Jotunheim, the giants heard it as a challenge. And in Asgard, the gods heard it as the final call to arms. The sound cut through the feasting and revelry in Valhalla, and the Einherjar, the chosen champions of humanity, instantly ceased their celebrations, took up their weapons, and assembled in the great courtyard. In his hall, Odin, the All-Father, heard the call and knew the long peace was over. Thor ceased his travels and gripped the handle of his hammer, Mjolnir, his knuckles white. The age of preparation was finished. The Gjallarhorn's note was not a sound of panic, but of solemn duty. It was the signal that fate, long prophesied, was now at hand. The gods of the Aesir donned their war regalia, their expressions grim but resolute. The gates of Asgard opened, and they marched out onto the Bifrost, their destination the great plain of Vigrid, where the final battle would decide the fate of the cosmos. The prophecies named the place of the final conflict, Vigrid, a plain so vast it stretched 100 leagues in every direction. It was here that the cosmic forces would collide. Under a sky stained red by the fires of Muspelheim and darkened by the serpent's venom, the 2 armies assembled. It was a sight of terrifying grandeur. On one side stood the defenders of order. Odin, the All-Father, sat atop his 8-legged steed, Sleipnir, holding his spear, Gungnir. He wore a golden helmet and a gleaming coat of mail, his single eye surveying the enemy with ancient wisdom and profound solemnity. Beside him were the gods of the Aesir, Tyr, the one-handed god of law and heroic glory. Freyr, the noble god of fertility, prepared for his final stand, and the ever-vigilant Heimdall, his horn now silent, his great sword drawn. Behind them stood a vast host of the Einherjar, the spirits of the greatest human warriors, chosen from the battlefields of Midgard and brought to Valhalla to train for this very day. They were an army of champions, ready to make their last stand alongside the gods. Facing them was the embodiment of chaos. The fire giant Surtur stood at the forefront, his flaming sword burning brighter than the sun, ready to set the world ablaze. The great wolf Fenrir snarled, a creature of pure hunger and destruction. The Midgard serpent, Jormungandr, coiled at the edge of the plain, its immense form a living mountain range of muscle and scale. And leading the legions of giants and other monstrous beings was Loki, the trickster god, his allegiance finally and irrevocably declared. The air on Vigrid was heavy and still, charged with the energy of imminent confrontation. This was not a battle for territory or treasure. It was a war of opposing principles, creation versus destruction, order versus chaos, light versus the encroaching void. Every participant, from the mightiest god to the humblest warrior spirit, knew their prophesied role. Fates intertwined as Odin sought out Fenrir, Freyr moved to intercept Surtur, and Thor's eyes scanned the horizon for the one foe he was destined to meet. As the Battle of Vigrid erupted into a cataclysm of cosmic fury, Thor, the champion of Asgard and protector of humanity, had only one adversary in his sights. He urged his chariot, drawn by his two powerful goats, Tangrisnir and Tanganjostr, across the ravaged battlefield. The ground shook with every impact of Mjolnir as he cleared a path, but these were incidental blows. His gaze was fixed on the horizon, where the colossal form of Jörmungandr, the Midgard serpent, loomed over the fray. This was the culmination of a rivalry that spanned ages. Their previous encounters, a deceptive fishing trip, a humiliating lifting contest orchestrated by giants, were but preludes to this final, fated duel. Thor dismounted, his feet landing on the blighted earth with a thunderous clap. He stood alone before the world-encircling beast, the god of thunder against the serpent of chaos. Jormungandr reared back, its massive jaws opening to spew a torrent of black venom. Thor met the assault with a whirlwind of his own, summoning a storm with Mjolnir. Lightning arced from the hammer to strike the serpent's scales, and thunder roared in defiance of the creature's hiss. The air crackled with raw power as the two ancient enemies clashed. The serpent coiled and struck, its strength capable of crushing mountains, while Thor met its every move with godlike strength and the unyielding power of his enchanted hammer. The fight was a maelstrom at the heart of Ragnarok, a private war that would determine the world's fate. Finally, seeing an opening, Thor summoned all of his divine might. He swung Mjolnir in a final, devastating arc. The hammer, which had felled countless giants and monsters, flew true. It struck the serpent's head with an impact that was felt across all the 9 realms. The great beast convulsed and fell, its immense body crashing to the ground. Victory! But as the serpent fell, its venomous blood sprayed forth, showering the triumphant god. Thor stumbled back, victorious but mortally wounded. He had vanquished his nemesis, but the serpent's poison was absolute. He managed to take 9 steps, a symbolic number, one for each realm he had protected, before his strength failed him. The thunder god, the mighty Thor, fell to his knees and then to the ground, his destiny fulfilled. The champion of order had fallen, but in his final act, he had removed one of the greatest threats to the world's rebirth. As the final battle of Ragnarok commences, the sky itself tears open. The sun and moon, pursued for eons, are finally consumed, plunging the 9 realms into an unnatural twilight. On the field of Vigrid, gods and giants meet in a cataclysmic confrontation. But for Thor, the god of thunder, there is only one adversary. The World Serpent, Jörmungandr, his ancient nemesis, rises from the abyssal depths. The ocean heaves and boils as the creature's colossal form uncoils, its body so immense it has encircled the world of mortals for ages. Now it releases its tail, and the resulting tidal waves crash against every shore, flooding the lands and shaking the foundations of creation. Thor, arriving in his goat-drawn chariot, does not hesitate. His eyes, burning with an intensity that rivals the lightning he commands, are fixed upon the serpent. He leaps from his chariot, landing on the ravaged earth with a ground-shaking impact. The air crackles with static energy as he grips the handle of his hammer. Mjolnir. This is not just a battle, it is the culmination of a cosmic feud, a prophecy unfolding in real time. Jormungandr rears its head, a living mountain of scales and fury, its jaws gaping wide enough to swallow stars. From its throat, it exhales a cloud of pure, black venom, a substance so potent it poisons the very air and water, withering life wherever it drifts. Thor stands his ground against this toxic gale, his divine nature offering some protection, but even he can feel its corrupting influence. In response, he raises his hammer high. The sky answers his call. A storm of unprecedented fury gathers directly above, a swirling vortex of black clouds and celestial fire. Lightning, raw and untamed, arcs from the heavens, striking the head of Mjolnir, charging it with the power of the cosmos. The god and the serpent face each other across the churning sea, a maelstrom of venom and lightning, two fundamental forces of the universe locked in a final, world-ending stare. The first clash is imminent, an impact that will echo through the silent void left in the wake of the gods. The battle is joined. Thor moves with a speed that belies his immense strength, a blur of divine energy against the backdrop of the world's end. He dodges a lunge from the serpent, the creature's fangs, each the size of a longship, snapping shut on empty air. The force of the serpent's movement sends tremors through the land, toppling what remains of mountains and ancient structures. The air is thick with the hiss of the beast and the roar of the thunder god. For every torrent of venom Jörmungandr spews, Thor answers with a bolt of lightning from his hammer, the searing light momentarily pushing back the encroaching gloom. This is a contest of endurance as much as power. The serpent's coils lash out, attempting to crush the god, but Thor is relentless, a force of nature in his own right. He knows this cannot be a prolonged fight. The serpent's poison is a pervasive plague, and with every passing moment, the world dies a little more. The fate of everything rests on a single, perfect strike. Summoning every ounce of his divine essence, the accumulation of a lifetime of battles and rage, Thor prepares for his final gambit. He plants his feet, his iron-gloved hands gripping Mjolnir so tightly that sparks fly. He channels the entirety of the raging storm above into his weapon. The hammer ceases to be a mere object of metal and magic. It becomes a miniature star, a point of impossible energy and light, so bright it hurts the eyes of the other gods fighting across the plain. With a final, deafening war cry that is both a challenge and a lament, Thor swings. The hammer flies through the venom-laced air, a comet of righteous fury. It travels in a perfect arc, aimed directly at the serpent's massive upturned head. The moment of impact is not loud, but silent, a sudden, complete absorption of all sound as reality itself buckles. A wave of pure force radiates outward, vaporizing the churning water and shattering the air. The great serpent convulses, its form shuddering from head to tail across the horizon. The hammer's final fall has found its mark. The World Serpent is vanquished. Its colossal body, mortally wounded by the ultimate power of Mjolnir, thrashes in its final moments before sinking back into the depths from which it came. The ocean calms, its rage subsiding with the creature's life force. For a moment, a profound stillness settles over the battlefield. Thor stands on the desolate shore, his chest heaving, the storm in the sky above him beginning to dissipate. He has done it. He has slain his greatest foe and ended the immediate threat to the cosmos. Mjolnir, its duty done, falls from his grasp and lands with a heavy thud on the wet, black sand. Victory is his. but it is a hollow, fleeting triumph. As the god stands, he is showered in a final, explosive spray of the serpent's black venom, a parting curse from his fallen enemy. The poison, potent beyond measure, seeps into his skin, bypassing his divine defenses. A creeping cold begins to spread through his veins, a feeling utterly alien to the fiery god of thunder. He looks down at his hands, then out at the gray, lifeless sea. He knows the prophecy. He has always known how this moment would end. His fate was written the day he was born, intertwined forever with that of the serpent. He turns his back to the ocean and begins to walk. One step. He thinks of Asgard, of its golden halls now under siege. 2 steps. He remembers his wife, Sif, and the warmth of his home. 3 steps. The faces of his sons, Magni and Modi, flash in his mind. He feels his strength, the legendary power that could wrestle giants and shatter mountains, beginning to fail him. 4, 5, 6 steps. The world around him blurs, the sounds of Ragnarok's wider conflict fading into a distant hum. 7 steps. He stumbles, his legs heavy as stone. 8. He falls to one knee, his gaze fixed on the horizon, not in defeat, but in acceptance. He has fulfilled his purpose. He has protected the realms to his last breath. With a final, shuddering effort, he takes his 9th fateful step, and the great god of thunder, protector of mankind, collapses upon the shore of the dying world. The fall of Thor is a devastating blow, but it is only one part of the grand, tragic symphony of Ragnarok. All across the plains of Vigrid, the final act of the gods is playing out. The prophecies, once whispered in shadowy halls, now manifest as undeniable, harsh reality. Odin, the All-Father, clad in his golden armor and riding his 8-legged steed Sleipnir, confronts his own prophesied doom, the monstrous wolf, Fenrir. The battle is one of ancient magic and primordial fury, a clash between the pinnacle of divine wisdom and untamable chaos. But the wolf's hunger, nursed for ages in confinement, is absolute. The great god of poetry, war, and knowledge is ultimately overcome, a titan of the old order consumed by the new age of destruction. Elsewhere, the guardian of the Bifrost Bridge, the ever-vigilant Heimdall, faces his own nemesis. His opponent is Loki, the trickster god, the architect of so much of this sorrow. Their duel is personal and bitter, a final reckoning between 2 beings on opposite sides of order and chaos. They are evenly matched, and in their final exchange, they inflict fatal wounds upon each other, ensuring neither will see the world that comes next. The noble god Freyr, having given away his magic sword for love long ago, faces the fire giant Surtur armed only with an antler. He fights with incredible bravery, but it is a valiant, yet hopeless struggle. He falls, leaving the path open for Surtur to complete his own destiny. With the primary defenders of Asgard now gone, Thor, Odin, Heimdall, Freyr, the end accelerates. Surtur, his flaming sword burning brighter than the sun, strides across the Bifrost Bridge, which shatters under his immense weight. He reaches the halls of the gods and unleashes his elemental fire. The flames consume everything, the golden walls of Valhalla, the great tree Yggdrasil, the very fabric of the 9 realms. It is a cleansing, all-consuming inferno, the final, fiery sunset of a cosmic era. This is Götterdämmerung, the twilight of the gods, a necessary end before any new beginning can be contemplated. The fire has burned itself out. The great flood has receded. The smoke has cleared. Where there was once a world of strife, ash, and sorrow, there is now only a calm, silent sea under a clear and empty sky. The old world, with its glories and its failings, is gone. But from the depths of the ocean, something new begins to stir. A new land rises, green and fertile, teeming with life and promise. It is a world washed clean, unburdened by the ancient oaths and unending conflicts of the past. This is not the return of the old, but the birth of the truly new. The sun has a daughter, a new celestial body that shines with a gentle, hopeful warmth upon this nascent world, and a few have survived the cataclysm. Thor's sons, Magni and Modi, emerge into this new dawn. They find their way to the fields of Idavol, the place where Asgard once stood. The golden city is gone, but in the green grass they find a treasure. Mjolnir, their father's hammer, its power intact, waiting for a new hand to wield it in defense of a new age. They are not alone. Vidar and Vali, sons of Odin who represent silence and revenge, also survived, their purpose in the old world fulfilled. From the underworld of Hell, the gentle and beloved god Baldur returns, his unjust demise in the previous age now reversed. He is accompanied by his brother, Hodr, the two reconciled and free from the machinations that once pitted them against each other. These few surviving gods gather on the fresh green plains. They speak of the past, of the tales and runes of the fallen All-Father, not with sorrow for what was lost, but with wisdom for what can be built. They discover the golden game pieces the Aesir once played with, a symbol of continuity, and the idea that the grand game of existence will begin anew. The cycle is complete. Destruction has given way to creation. The thunderous end of the old world was but the necessary prelude to the quiet, hopeful dawn of the next.